What's up guys, I'm Zach and welcome back to Workshop Edits. In today's project, I want to take you through how I built this round coffee table built entirely out of white oak and steel. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we are here in the shop. So the first thing that we are going to begin doing is breaking down all of the white oak for both the top and the bottom shelves of this coffee table. Now, the great thing about this project is I'm actually going to be able to utilize all of the offcuts from the previous white oak and steel kitchen table that I made. I did have to purchase some extra material, but the good thing about that is we're also going to build some shelves for our bedroom with them. So it's really efficient to plan your projects and be able to utilize all of the offcuts for future things. It just makes woodworking a little bit more affordable, especially when you're dealing with hardwood. So we're just going to do this in a couple of stages. We have to mill up those offcuts because we didn't do any shaping of them on the previous project, and then we have to break down that other piece and just build out all of the different components for the two layers. The top of the table is going to be around 31 inches. The bottom is going to be 29 inches because it's going to be housed in between a set of steel legs. So we're just going to cut our wood to those dimensions so that we can make sure we have enough for both the top and the bottom of that. Okie dokie. So all of the boards have been broken down, both the pieces that were remaining from the table as well as the new boards. What I want to do is just run every single board through the planer, at least on one side, the side that's going to be the top. That way it just has a nice clean surface to work with. So what I'm going to do before that is just arrange the boards out just in the layout that I like and then mark it and keep it. Then I think we're going to be ready to glue these up. The other thing is it's about 100 degrees in my shop right now. So if I look like a hot, sweaty mess, it's because I am. All right, so, my goodness, it's hot in here. So I have, this is gonna be the bottom shelf. This will be the top shelf. They have been jointed, ripped to their final width so the sides are perfectly straight. And when I push them together, you can tell it's just gonna be a really nice joint between all of the seams. So in my previous video, when I was doing a big glue up for our tabletop, I used dowels to line things up. I'm just gonna skip that step this time. I don't think I need it. I think it's gonna be a little bit easier. It's gonna save me time, and I'm just gonna use cawls between all of the joints just to help keep things flat. I'm just gonna use some of my big 3-foot and 4-foot clamps for both of these, and I'm just gonna do my best to glue it up, keep it flat, and then let this sit overnight, and then we're gonna return to it tomorrow. All right, so both of the tabletops have been carrying in these clamps for a couple of days now. So what I want to do next is take everything out and scrape both sides of each of these pieces to get rid of all of the excess glue. Then we are going to route the circles out on both of them, and I'm just going to do that with a homemade circle router jig. I don't own a special one. They're super easy to make. Just going to use a scrap sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. We're going to bolt the plunge router that I have and then just use a straight bit. The top piece is going to be a little over 2 inches wider than the bottom one because the bottom one will sit recessed in a metal base, and then the top one will sit on top of that metal base. I think I'm going to aim for 31 inches for the top, and then just a little under 29 inches for the bottom one. So once I do have that plunged and routed out as much as I can, I'll probably head over to either the bandsaw or use the jigsaw just to cut away the remainder of the material, and then use a flush trim bit just to complete that circle. Once those things are finished, we can turn our attention to sanding all of the surfaces and applying the finish. All right, so these tabletops are both sanded to 220 grit. What we're gonna do next is move on to finishing. So again, for this project, I'm using white oak, and I'm gonna be using Rubio Monocoat in cotton white. I love how that turned out for our kitchen table. I've already gone into a lot of detail on how to apply this finish in a previous video, so I'm not gonna talk a whole lot about it now. Instead, I'll leave a link to that video up on one of these sides so you can check that out. So for now, we're just gonna clean off these tabletops with some mineral spirits, and then we're going to apply the finish, buff it in, and then remove all the excess for it. Then we're gonna let that cure again for 7 days because we're using the accelerator with it, because otherwise it would take 21 days for that oil to fully cure. All right, so it has been a minute since I worked on this project. What I realized was the bottom shelf specifically needs to be fully finished and ready to go so that when I weld the base, I can drop it in, and then I'll have to weld on top support pieces that will attach to the top tabletop. And so once I do that, I won't be able to get the bottom shelf out. So that's got to be totally ready to go, which it is now. And so we can get on to welding up the base. So we're going to start by cutting things down with the metal chop saw, and then head over to the welding table. And I think it's going to be good. So let's get started. All right, so I had all the pieces cut down. They also have their edges ground, which prepped them for welding, and I welded up the bottom cross support for the bottom shelf. So what you just saw me doing was cutting a 2x4 to the exact length of the cross support piece that you see right here. And what that's going to allow me to do is clamp this up so that I know that the actual legs of the table are perpendicular to each other and that the spacing is exactly what they want. I also ripped the width of the piece to be 1.25 inches so that I could put it underneath this cross support, and that is going to then allow me to have an even height of an inch and a quarter off from the ground, so I just know that everything's gonna end up being perpendicular. You'll see what I mean when I get it all clamped up and start welding. All right, so you can see how I have this clamped up. So I have a spacer underneath, which means that this is perfectly level. I have this piece, which is the exact same length as this wooden piece on the bottom, and I have it clamped together so that I know that these are both perpendicular to each other. And then I also checked using my square just to make sure that this is square. That looks good. That looks good too. And then that these pieces are level with each other. I think it's good to go, so we're just gonna tack in place all of these places and then do full welds for the entire piece. Then we're gonna do the same thing on this side, and then we can drop in the base once we drill holes. We'll feed some screws through there. All right, so I'm kind of at the point of no return on this. So what I did was grind down all of the welds on the base. I sanded everything using 80 grit. What it does is just flush up all of the welds, and it ends up just looking like a really nice continuous piece of steel. So a little tip I recommend doing if you're not a great welder like me. So now I have, you can see the tabletop, which I just dropped into place. I have these flat pieces of steel that I just cut over at the metal chop saw again. And what I'm gonna do now is weld these into place. This is gonna attach to the bottom of the base, and then I'm gonna attach little pieces here. This is gonna help keep these pieces from flexing because they just have a little bit of a bow to them. And then the other parts are just gonna help attach the table overall. And I also drilled holes on the base so that when it actually comes to it, I can attach them using a couple of screws and washers. That'll just be kind of floating screws to account for some wood movement. My one concern is that I don't want to get any of the welding sparks on the bottom piece, so I just have this little piece of white hardboard blocking things. I'm going to be careful with my welds. It should work out just fine, but yeah, so that's what we are going to do next. Once we have those pieces welded up, we can go back again, flush up all of the welds on top while protecting the bottom, clean everything off with mineral spirits, give everything a clear coat, and then we can do a final assembly. Let's do it. All right, so that is gonna wrap it up for this video. I think this coffee table turned out awesome. It is gonna fit perfectly in our space. It's been on my to-do list for about 2 years now. It matches the kitchen table that I built a few weeks ago perfectly. And yeah, just really excited that it's finally done. So if you enjoyed the video, just let me know by hitting that like button. I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time on whatever it is that I'm building. Bye.